Good afternoon.
Definitely not our friends in...
We're here to talk about AI and its application in medicine. We've got three people with very different applications of AI. Tobias at the end there, he's B2B, the hardcore of AI, sorting out cancer, mammograms, and such like. We've got Helen, or Helena in the middle. She's bringing AI to big data and women in particular, so that we better understand them. Long ignored, I'm afraid, in health, but being fixed by Helena. And Michael, who runs a business called Humanity, which is using AI to help us live longer, which is not a bad thing. So, Tobias, tell us a little bit about your business, and I know you've got a paper in Nature out this afternoon, which is no small thing. You might give us a hint about that.
Yeah, so what we do at Chiron is very easily explained. We help doctors find cancer early using AI. And you just mentioned the Nature paper. It's coming out later today, where we show that indeed, when you use AI in the breast screening program, we are increasing the cancer detection rate by 15%, which means that in the UK, we can save an additional 2,000 women per year as a starting point.
So that's a really amazing feat, I think, and one of the most powerful and obvious applications, which shows that AI in medicine is really here today. So you can imagine radiographers looking at scans. They're like all of us. Sometimes they come into work a bit hungover, they get a bit tired, they've got stress at home, and they will just miss stuff, which a machine doesn't, right?
Mia is always on. Mia is the name of our product. Reads within 10 seconds. And really, the pool currently in the healthcare system is coming from the fact that most healthcare systems in breast cancer screening are in crisis. We simply do not have enough radiologists to do the work that's required. And basically how breast cancer screening works is 2 human readers read every single case, and Mia becomes one of those readers. So we're saving 50% of the workload and actually allowing healthcare system to find the cancer early.
And I think one of the reassuring things I read about this was that although there are generally 2 readers in a conventional radiography department, sometimes there's just one. And if there's just one, the process, they spend longer on it, right? The humans, because they're worried that they haven't got someone else to check. And I thought it's quite reassuring in a way, right?
Yeah, I think what we are seeing is that the 2 humans are supposed to read every case independently. But when the first human knows there's someone else looking over their shoulder, they actually read faster, and the performance of the first reader is a lot higher than the second reader. But we don't always have those 2 human readers. And that's a fundamental problem, I think, across the entire healthcare system. We don't have enough doctors.
Okay. And so your technology is being rolled out in the NHS at the moment, as I understand.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I think 500,000 women, over 15 locations, is that right?
So in the UK, we won one of the UK government's first AI awards, which was a large investment to roll out AI in the NHS faster. We won one of the largest awards, which allowed us to roll out in 15 screening units across the UK, which represents 500,000 women per year in screening volume. And we're just completing that rollout now and scaling to the rest of the country later.
So that's an amazing achievement and hard work getting those contracts. These guys, Helena and Michael, are both on the B2C side of things, right? And that's got some advantages. Helena, you want to tell the crowd about the advantage of getting directly to the consumer.
Should I tell you what I do first?
Tell us what you do.
So, being a woman and growing up doing sports, I thought it was pretty shitty to be a woman. I tried really hard, and I love doing sports, but I would always be less fast, less strong, and less interesting than men in media because I was just a woman, and I thought that sucked. And being a data scientist, I tried to understand, is there an advantage actually to be a woman? And the messaging I had growing up wasn't that I have this incredible body that can create all of humanity, but I just had this like moody and bitchy and complicated body that no one understood, and actually really no one cared. So I tried to find a solution to that, which is at the origin of Wild AI. So what we do is research on the female body, which we translate into an app to help women eat, exercise, and recover with their menstrual cycle if they have one, or with their symptoms if they use birth control, are in menopause. So that's our app. We take data from wearables and manual input, aggregate these two, and based on that, the AI engine provides the personalized and adaptive recommendations on a daily basis. And now we can license that technology to third parties, wearables, health app, sports apps, so they can feminize their data sets and the interpretation of the data, which is a huge opportunity because, we are called femtech because by opposition, all the rest is tech, i.e. mentech. So we are a B2C, but we're going definitely in B2B to scale. And to your question, why it's interesting, the B2C is as a position to the B2B, which is long-lasting contracts, very hard to get to. As we can see now with ChatGPT, it's adopted by the individuals, and it goes very fast, whereas corporates and governments to adopt AI and new technology is quite difficult. So in the B2C world, what is amazing, and what we've seen running some research and surveys, individuals, they love participating because they really want to have their own data sets understood, and we're going to this world which is this personalized approach to our own health. There's a book I love from Eric Topol, The Patient Will See You, which is flipping the way we approach our health, which is from I go to the doctor, it's the only person who can prescribe a test, read the test, and then provide the solutions. We can flip that, and I can go with my wearable data, and I say, I think this is what I have, like, can you now solve it? And B2C, I think, really is like the entry point for AI.
And tell me a little bit about the data set that you envisage building over time. So you've got 80,000 users now, and that's growing. You're in an area which, as you say, has tended to focus entirely on men. They've missed menstrual cycles, missed menopause. I know this from my wife, who, runs into these things without any guidance in life. So tell us a bit about the vision for the data over time.
Yeah, what is really interesting in this world today is when we talk about all these LLM models and all the models that we can also have access now as individuals if you try ChatGPT, is that this is based on available data sets. And we have a massive bias on excluding female data sets, besides your company that is mostly on female data sets. But so it's really important to have companies like ours that is creating at the very beginning female data sets. I'll give you an anecdote. I was at the beginning of my company where 2 men, 2 women sat discussing what data we have to track. And the women said, we have to track sex drive. And the guy said, why track sex drive? It never changes. And we're like, oh, it changes all the time. So this is like data creation level, and then interpretation, and then recommendations. So being able to do that is we need companies like ours that are still have a real edge in the world now where it's getting crazy with LLMs.
Okay, thank you very much. So Michael, tell us a little bit about Humanity Health. Mm-hmm. It's an app that looks at how rapidly you're aging and gives us tips about how to slow that down. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah, so I got started in it because of actually, what Tobias is working on. I had a relative find out stage 4 about cancer, came out of the blue, and I started going down that rabbit hole, and I started finding that people were doing some amazing stuff, and it's really cool to see, Chiron and companies like that finally, really bringing it to people. But I needed to find my place in it. I created a big dating site that got quite large called Badoo. My co-founder created a social network. And so, yeah, we were enthralled with this space, but we weren't the scientists or the researchers. What we basically got to is that, yes, we're going to have all this AI, but we need to deploy it somehow, right? We need people to be able to. So right now, the only thing I would change in your description is right now we get tips, but those tips really aren't based on a lot. They're based on like a study on like 1,000 people that was done, 10 years ago, probably mostly not females, and it's supposed to represent the 8 billion of us, right? And so having a system like ours that actually, we got a prediction of your future health, which is your biological age. We're watching all the actions you're taking. And then across the user base, we're watching all the actions. And it's a fairly, gender balanced, but also ethnically balanced user base. And then you're saying, okay, what group of actions for what type of person changes their future health, and then actually gives real guidance. Not, I wouldn't say personalized yet, big cohorts, but that's actually where the system's going, right?
So yeah, I mean, one of the important takeaways, I guess, is that you wouldn't claim to have all the answers yet, but both of you in the middle there, as the data builds, things will get more and more accurate. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say, like Helene kind of hit on, like we need to get more of this data out there, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to keep the full privacy of the user data. But I think generative AI, one of the big things that's happening is we're starting to see that synthetic data is almost as good. Many people are starting to show that it is as good, but almost as good as real data, but completely private. So it's just the information of the original data. And so if we can get more of that information out there, then we will stop having these biases. And I think Helene is showing that's possible.
So tell me, is synthetic data just the same as anonymized data?
It's been used interchangeably in the past.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. So I'm a vegetarian. I go into so many restaurants and I say I'm a vegetarian, and they ask me, do you eat fish? Okay. The problem is people have misused the word vegetarian so many times. We have a word for it. It's called pescatarian. But that's my own personal battle to fight. But in the data space, I think people have been switching anonymized and synthetic so long. And in the past, it probably was very close. But now, if you go through enough steps, it's different. You're not just taking off some columns and adding some noise. You're actually taking the information, the latent space, which is a very bad name for it, but the latent space, the information, and then you're creating a completely fake database. And that is different than anonymized data. Yeah.
Okay. And the interesting point here, which is we've been talking about that for a long time with Mike, is that we can create really advanced research and knowledge if we can collaborate not on our data sets, because it's private to companies and our users, but on the knowledge, and then advanced research and collaborate all the companies together, and that's really like a big leapfrog to the future.
Yep.
And that's the analogy is with ChatGPT. Is that right? That you throw something out there and create a bigger and bigger data set that becomes more intelligent over time.
Yeah, it's just a bigger and bigger knowledge base Tim Berners-Lee created, he didn't create the internet, he created the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
So the World Wide Web was the thing that made the internet accessible for all of us, right? And so the analogy can be that, hey, we need to actually let this health information be available to everybody, not just the people in Oxford, not just the cool entrepreneurs, we need it to be available for everybody, because a lot of people in this audience and the other, 7.9 billion people can, do something with that. So that's what we see with synthetic data and this information being available. It can, change the impact quite a bit.
And Tobias, you're dealing with tumors. So what happens when our body gets things wrong, and to a certain extent what happens with age. How optimistic would you be with these guys that they can really optimize data to reduce the chance of people turning up in clinics ultimately where they're being scanned for tumors?
Yeah, I think the two are very closely related, right? It's if you look at sort of our current healthcare system, we're spending a lot of money on a late stage of the pathway, right? We're spending a lot of money in treatment, on drugs. That needs to shift to an earlier stage, either prevention, ideally, but you can't always prevent every disease. Early detection is the next best step. The earlier you find a cancer, the higher survival chances and the lower the cost of treatment is. And I think that is possible with AI that has a broad enough understanding of the world. So I think ChatGPT is an interesting example in the World Wide Web because these language models have been trained on an incredibly large corpus of data, right? In a way, the World Wide Web represents our knowledge. That's not true for many healthcare data sets. Many healthcare data sets are very siloed and hence are very biased, right? They might come from one specific hospital with a specific population or with a specific healthcare system that biases towards a richer population, for example. And your AI will learn those biases unless we can find ways to get the data together in a way. And synthetic data has a huge role to play, or ways to centralize these data a bit more, or at least unify them. It doesn't need to be centrally stored, but unify them.
So just for the audience, when we're talking about health and big data, there are a lot of privacy concerns. And I wonder how many of you would be happy to see your data just shared. So it's a minority, but not an insignificant one. What about those who would be happy to see it shared if it was completely anonymized? So that's pretty much everyone. There's still a few standouts. Does that encourage you, or does that make your lives more difficult, do you think?
I'll give you like a real example. Like we do a lot of research and the research studies within our population, and I'm biased because it's on women, but women love sharing their data because we feel so unheard that when we launch a research application we are looking at, for instance, the impact of, at the time, COVID vaccine on the menstrual cycle. Women were like, in 2 days we had 2,000 applicants, which in the world of research is massive.
Yeah.
So like more than the room, I would say, like from our personal experience, it's women love sharing.
Because they want to help other women.
Because they want to help themselves and other women. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's,
is
that your experience?
I mean, just to make the clarification, I think it makes me feel good to see that, but I also, I ran the largest consumer VPN in the world, so I'm very particular about privacy, very particular about security. Had a lot of three-letter agencies not very happy with me over the years because we would not give up any data. So the cool thing about it now is that we don't need to make that choice.
Right, because it is synthetic.
Yeah, you get the permission from the user, can I create this product, which is this synthetic data product, but your data will stay with us. Your data will never be anonymized and sent somewhere. This is much better than GDPR. The data stays, and when you say to delete it, it's actually deleted off the face of the earth as opposed to already sitting in a bunch of data sets. So I think that's where most of us would want to move to, and the technology now allows us to do that. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, there are still companies that are selling the data and making their business model based on that. And I think like all of us, this is not what we're doing. If we are using the data, it's to advance the research. And we're very clear with that with the users.
Yep. And so the model becomes the product, not the data. So.
Right. Yeah. Now, tell me then a bit about living longer. And this is for both of you in the middle. What are the key data markers that you think we should all be watching now? I know there are more to come, but what are the key things?
So we wanted to, probably it was easier for us to do this because we were, a person who started a dating app and a social network, so we were the outsiders. But we wanted to take a very kind of agnostic look at it, and there was one of our scientific advisory board, Kristen Fortney, she turned me on to this idea that you should look at longitudinal data sets. So the UK Biobank is a great example of this. They've been watching the same people same 500,000 people for about 18 years now.
Yeah.
And so you don't try to put all of our knowledge of medical stuff on top of it. You just say, hey, they had their bloods measured, they had their movement pattern, so they hooked on accelerometers, they had their heart rate pattern, so they hooked on heart monitors about 18 years ago. And then you actually see what happened to them health-wise for the next 18 years, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, then you're able to say, okay, all these things they measured on them in the past are predictors. And so can we collect those predictors on our users? And if we can, then we can basically give some prediction to their future health. And so then you can just take a very agnostic stance where, okay, we have a prediction of future health. Let's watch all the actions they're taking, what type of person they are, did it make their future health better or worse, the prediction of it. And that's kind of how, and so anything that's in longitudinal data sets becomes a predictor. We use movement pattern and heart rate pattern. And then we also just got published into Nature, which we also haven't announced. But
Nature's going
so for a blood model, but it was very much in line with our mission, where we basically, in the past, you would have to get certain blood markers tested, so like 13 blood markers, and then we can give you a reading. We made a model where you can upload any blood markers that you might have gotten for any reason into our model. So we're trying to democratize it and make it easier for people to do it. But yeah, really anything that's held in these longitudinal data sets ends up being something that can help you understand better what your future might be.
And that is where the AI comes in, right? Because with thousands of different markers covering everything from bloods to menstrual cycles to sex, it's difficult, right? It's difficult to tease out what's important and what's not. Tell us a little bit about that, Helena, how you're writing these algorithms.
So to go away from the algorithms, one thing that I'm really surprised always about the longevity world is that we don't analyze why women live longer than men. And I don't have the answer. I'll give you some absolutely non-scientific assumptions, but we have, for instance, we regenerate our blood every month for 40 years. Maybe that's an answer. Women are very, they talk a lot. So men, very often when they have an issue, they would isolate themselves, and society and network is really important. Like when we look at the blue zones, and I know you're looking at that at Humanity, which is amazing. When we look at the blue zones is the nutrition, but also pleasures like drinking some wine and the community aspect and all these things together. So like algorithms, obviously, we're all like, we love that, but there is also this very human aspect, and there's these people who are taking all these pills to live longer, but it's not a really fun life. So like I think the things that are very interesting for us on a daily basis to understand, like, can I ameliorate my lifestyle so I have more chances of living not only longer but better? Obviously, like the metrics that Mike is tracking from sleep to your resting heart rate and HRV, which are heart variability indicators of your health, but also things like, am I close to my family, to my friends? Am I enjoying life? Am I happiness, as in, do I feel fulfilled today? And things like that are actually really important on a daily basis. And obviously the metrics and the trackers that we are obsessed with are just a good way to read what is happening as more subjective data, which we track in our app.
So I think it's a really good point that it's not just the length of life we should be thinking about, but the quality of life. And I think that probably that's changed most dramatically, from my age upwards, right? It used to be that people 55 and up were spending their time in a lounge chair, where now it's very different, right? People skiing, climbing, right into their 70s, 80s, and 90s even. I don't know if you think a little bit about that, Tobias?
Well, actually, Michael and I were talking about that backstage for a bit, because when you look at detection of disease and screening, that's just one step. But when you start screening, you will inevitably find those disease. And what do you then do, right? What does the treatment pathway look like? And I think what we've learned in breast cancer screening, which is one of the most established screening pathways or programs, is that sometimes it's better not to treat the person where you find the cancer. When you find a invasive but slow-growing breast cancer in someone who's 75 years old, it's probably better to let that person live with the cancer, because that person may not die from cancer, rather than go through a horrific chemo treatment. So I think the actual detection and what you then do afterwards, or thinking about treatment and the quality of life, are inherently linked.
Yeah, and that's it emphasizes the importance of a patient-centered approach, right? That people are making informed choices for
Absolutely.
themselves.
I think in the end, it's about what we want to is give people more understanding of the cancer that they may or may not have. And this is where we see a very big difference between how healthcare institutions look at AI versus the consumer directly. And we had a funny anecdote from one of our studies where this was officially an opt-out study, so people could call us if they want to opt out. And we received very few phone calls. I think it was around 10 or 15. But the vast majority of those women called us not to opt out, but to tell us how excited they were that Mia was going to read their AI. And that's overwhelmingly what we're hearing from women and patients. They're excited about AI and want to learn more.
So that's a question for the audience. Who would rather have a human read their scan than an AI? Right. So the humans are in the small minority there.
Yeah.
I think the truth of it is that it's checked, right?
Yeah.
Helena, tell us a little bit then about your vision for women's data over time and where we'll be in 20 years' time. Will our understanding be very different?
Yeah, the incredible opportunity we have is that we are at really the inception of understanding the female body, which is insane and insulting, but for us as a company, an amazing opportunity. So hopefully, and I'm mind blown that we are just now starting to look at endometriosis, PCOS, perimenopause. Who knows here what perimenopause means? Yeah, so it's the 1 to 10 years time before you are in menopause. Menopause is where you still have a lot of symptoms, where you start having a lot of symptoms. Menopause is the 12 months birthday of not having a period. So like the vast majority of people do not know that a woman might go for 10 years of this like second adolescence. So there's very little knowledge on our bodies, and we've been treated as like these crazy people feeling these things. And when we are 13 years old and we have pain and we tell our sports instructor, he's like, run like the other kids, it doesn't matter. And that's what we are told as women, is like, it doesn't matter and you're a crazy person. So right now we are in this world where we're like, no, it actually does matter, and we are going to look at that. And so for us as a company, the huge opportunity is that we can bring a little bit we're bringing knowledge that exists today to women. So in the app, you can see what might happen to you. So we don't operate in the dark anymore, so we can take decisions. And then what are the recommendations to reduce your negative symptoms, and what you can do to really take advantage of your body. When you ovulate, prime time, push high intensity, but also the body really needs carbs and fats, which we are not told as women that we should be using that. So how can we take advantage of this full body? So the big opportunity for me is, I was never told, as I was saying before, as a woman growing up, that I have this insane, incredible body. And I want everyone to celebrate women, that when they see women around them, it's like, we have this, we literally create all of you. So when I was pregnant, I was thinking like, wow, I am God. Like,
don't go too far, Helena. Don't go too far.
So the future is a world where women are celebrated, where we love our bodies, and when we talk about data sets, where we really have this huge diversity that we, like tech companies, tech products, and the medical world can serve women too.
Applaud that. Michael, a very final word from you. You're gonna make sure we're all here longer, so you get the last word.
Yeah. I would say download the Humanity app if you have an iPhone. Download Wild.ai, and I'm perfectly fine living in a universe where Helene is a god.
I think I am too. Okay, thank you very much indeed. It's been a great talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.